Good evening. The time is 7:02. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Councilwoman Jones, could you do the invocation, please?
Certainly. Our eternal God, our Father, we thank you so much for this day, for this is the day that you have made, Lord, and we have rejoiced and been glad in it. We thank you for your loving kindness and your tender mercies. We thank you, Father, for all of the citizens of the city of Glenarden, and we ask you, Father, to bless those that are in need of healing. Continue to comfort those that are mourning, Father. Continue, oh God, to move by your Spirit, that each and every citizen in this city, oh God, whatever they stand in the need of, Lord, that we will continue to meet their needs. We thank you, Father, that we've come together tonight for this meeting. We ask you, Father, to get in the midst, Lord. Bring your loving kindness and your peace, your grace, your mercy, all of your attributes to this meeting tonight, Father. Bless each and every individual, Lord. Bless the mayor of the city. Bless the councils and all of the administrative persons, Father, that make this city what it is today. We thank you for each and every one of the hands that help us to create and bring this city to what it needs to have. And we thank you for your love. We thank you for your kindness. We ask you, Father, to continue, Lord, to put a hedge of protection around all of us and keep us in your ways. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you do the roll call, please?
Sure. Councilwoman Fareed?
Here.
Councilwoman Guillaume?
Here.
Councilman Hairston?
Here.
Okay. Councilman Herring?
Here.
Councilwoman Council Vice President and Council President Curtis.
Here. We have a quorum. Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, by unanimous consent, the agenda is hereby adopted. The only thing on the agenda today is citizens' comments on proposed legislation. Proposed legislation is O-02-2025, O-03-2025, O-04-2025, R-20-2025, R-21, 22, 23, and 24 of 2025. Citizens, if you have a comment, please raise your hand. If you're in the room, raise your hand. I'll call on you, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak on proposed legislation. If you're online, please raise your virtual hand. If you do not know how to raise your virtual hand, please feel free to open your mic, and I will call on you. The floor is now open for citizens' comments. Go once. Yep. Ms. Wilson?
Good evening, everybody. I'm not in agreement with O-04-2025, the ordinance to regulate the parking of work vehicles and prohibit the parking of commercial vehicles, blah, blah, blah. And that public areas to support community business growth while preserving traffic flow and neighborhood quality of life. I don't think that this ordinance is doing what is needed to be done. There have been several senior citizens who have come forth and have said they have asked for something to be done with the parking in their neighborhoods, in their areas. And I don't think that this will take care of it. I don't think this is going to solve the problem. The problem is that once if you pass this ordinance, all it does is puts the commercial vehicles in the driveways. It does not alleviate the problem for the seniors. What it does is that it puts more cars, more vehicles on the streets. So it is not solving the issue. I really think that Councilman Herring's ordinance would take care of it. And then if you don't even pass Councilman Herring's ordinance, I'm not understanding why it is that you all are always saying that we're one Glenarden, one Glenarden. He brought up a very good point at the last meeting that you all don't, Woodmore does not have any commercial vehicle parking in their neighborhood. And so it's my understanding that other HOAs have the same type thing going on. So why is it that the other areas that are not HOAs, why can't they have the restrictions that are necessary so that there's no commercial parking in the city whatsoever? I think that would solve the problem. I think right now you've got in the work session you all talked about what's the word that I'm looking for? People being able to have a living, people being able to, I guess, that have their work vehicles so that they would be able to make a living. But the question is, what happens with the people's lives? We're putting livelihood over lives, and your seniors are not going to be here forever. They're asking for relief now. And so the only solution that they will have would be that they die if you all don't look out for them. And right now, this ordinance does not look out for them. You're only putting more vehicles on the streets. And I think that it's a shame that we don't care about our seniors any more than what we do, because you're looking over them. You're pushing them aside. Their issue is not going to be dealt with immediately with this ordinance. It's not. It is not going to happen. And whether you all say it will or will not, you all have had 3 years to deal with this issue. And every time Councilman Herring has said something about it, you all push it aside. Someone comes in here and says, oh, well, I need it for my livelihood. You all put that at the forefront. You do not put the seniors at the forefront. You got people who are 90-some years old who are asking for relief. And I think that you all need to give them the relief that they need and not putting livelihoods over lives. I think it's very important that you consider them. And I don't think this is taking that into consideration. I really don't. It's not going to solve the issue. So that's my opinion. And that's why I'm against this. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? All right.
Council President, may I say one thing, though?
Yes, Councilman Jones.
Thank you. In reference to Ordinance 04-2025, in Section 1 under Purpose, it says, this ordinance aims to regulate the parking of work vehicles and prohibit the parking of commercial vehicles on city streets to support Glenarden's small business community and economic growth, while preserving the quality of life, safety, and accessibility within residential neighborhoods and public spaces. It clearly states that this this ordinance has been created to prohibit the parking of commercial vehicles. And then there's a definition of commercial vehicles underneath that. I want all of the citizens to know that, and our seniors to know that, yes, this resolution does cover that. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Jones. Yes. Did you just state your name, and then you can have your 5 minutes.
Sure. Thank you. Yvonne Bell White, proud citizen of Glenarden. Councilmember Jones, I have a question. You mentioned economic growth. Can you say more to what you mean by economic growth and the businesses that that benefit? Can you give us an example?
As far as economic growth is concerned, I believe this is speaking of and that there are citizens that have moved into the community, that have bought homes in the community, such as, I'll give an example of one down on Delwood. He's in the HVAC business. He has his own HVAC business. He parks his car, his truck, his van. He parks his van in his driveway. He's never parked it on the street since he's been here. He was in the meeting, in the last meeting that we had concerning this. He parks his truck in his driveway. He is a entrepreneur, let's say. He's not working for a company. He works for himself. He's licensed. He's bonded. He has all the criteria to do HVAC servicing. If you take his truck away from him, or tell him to move his truck to someplace else, then what about his family? What about his wife and his children? He has 4 children that he's supporting. This is where we're talking about economic development in the community. And there are others in the community that are the same way. The community, the geographics of the community has changed. When my family moved here in 1964, all over Glenarden, it was mostly government workers. My father worked out at Andrews Air Force Base. The people that lived on Carker Avenue, I can say, were either teachers, educators, or they worked for the government. So there was not that many. We didn't see that many commercial vehicles per se like what we're seeing now, vans and of that nature in the community. Everybody mostly had cars. I remember that the Smallwood family, Mr. George Smallwood, he was a entrepreneur, let's say. He did lawns and did snow service. So he had these vehicles, but he didn't have them in the community. I don't know where he parked his vehicles, his work vehicles, but he had his wife's Cadillac, and they had another car in the area. They weren't there. So now the geographics, the demographics of this community has changed. We have a lot of people that have moved in, mostly Africans and our Hispanic neighbors that they work on their own. They take their vehicles and they go to different places, or they work for different companies that require them to use tools and work with their hands.
Thank you. Second question, what's the percentage of the number of businesses that you're referring to? You said there are a number, but you only gave us one example.
Okay, as far as businesses, I don't know the number of businesses. I had asked the code enforcement to give me a tally on the box trucks. I think Councilman Herring referred to box trucks that he was seeing. I wanted to know the number of box trucks. I haven't gotten that information from them yet, but I'm sure that they're tallying that information and bringing it forth. And as I came home this weekend, I decided, since it was a long weekend, Friday, Saturday, I kind of rode around the community. The only thing I saw as far as trucks in violation would have been the 2 tractor trailers, the one that was parked on Church Street, and then there was another trailer over here on Johnson Street. There's another person that parks the half of a semi over on Reed Street. So those were the only trucks that I saw that would have been in violation as far as a commercial vehicle.
Okay, but if they were out servicing or doing their business, you wouldn't know that, because those were the only 2 that you saw on that particular day when you were riding around.
During the day, I don't do it, because during the day, those vehicles have a right to be here if they are, like I said, like you said, if they're servicing a neighbor or doing some kind of work. It's the ones that I see after hours, anything after 5 p.m.
Okay.
After business hours, and this is what I saw after 5 p.m.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? I would just like to add, just to clarify, because it seems to be a common theme of a note that we don't care about senior citizens, and that cannot be further from the truth. Does this particular legislation solve every parking problem in the city? Absolutely not. But however, some time ago, there was legislation sponsored by Councilwoman Fareed and Councilmember Herring to establish parking enforcement. Because what I have heard from senior citizens who've come to meetings to voice their concerns, and some who've pulled me to the side, is that they have a hard time backing out of their driveway because there are too many cars on the street. And that legislation that Councilmember Herring and Councilwoman Fareed sponsored, and it was passed unanimously by the council, hopefully addresses that concern, in that limits the number of cars that can be parked on the street. Now, we're in the process of getting that up and going. Mr. Green, our code enforcement director, is in the process of getting that up and going and giving a 30-day notice to citizens before we can put signs on the street. And it's going to take some time. So there's empathy there for people. I've seen it. I've driven in Ward 1. I'm always in Ward 1. My son goes to school in Ward 1. So I can empathize with what is going on over there, and the city is working as fast as we can to alleviate that issue. I also understand that we do not want commercial vehicles in the city. Well, O-04-2025 addresses that. It prohibits commercial vehicles in the city. However, it does give an exception for work vehicles. So people who like Ms. Councilwoman Jones just mentioned, if they are a landscaper, or if they are a Washington Gas Company, or if they are an HVAC person, they can go to work and they could come home and park in their driveway. Just one. More than one is not acceptable. Only one work vehicle in their driveway, so that they can continue their livelihood. We're not risking anybody's lives by having a person park in their driveway, so they can continue however they go out and make a living. That's not putting any lives at risk. From what I got from senior citizens who came to speak about, the real issue is the number of cars that are on the streets that are blocking driveways, or making it so tight that people cannot see when they come out. And so the attempt is to, with both of these legislations, the one that's already passed and the one that's being proposed, is to alleviate and address all of those issues, while maintaining safety, caring about our seniors, and maintaining the livelihood of others. We don't have to pick and choose which one we adhere to. There's no priority given to livelihood over life. Clearly, life comes before anything. But this legislation, the combination of these two legislations, I believe, will address those concerns, and hopefully we can get to those parking permits sooner rather than later, but we have to follow the proper protocol. Councilwoman Fareed.
Thank you, Council President. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that the definition of commercial vehicle that is being used in this ordinance is not arbitrary. It is based off of the federal government's definition of a commercial motor vehicle, which is defined as a gross vehicle weight rating of 10,000 or 1 pound or more. So in our case, we are saying those types of vehicles, 10,000 and 1 pound or more, are prohibited from being in the city of Glenarden. It is the vehicles that are smaller than that that are being used for work purposes that fall under the definition of work vehicles. And those work vehicles can only be parked in driveways. So for the purposes of or the concerns that were raised about obstructions in the street, those vehicles will need to be parked in the driveway. Also, because the issue was the size of those vehicles and their obstruction to people in the streets, whether those types of vehicles are used for work purposes or not, they will need to be parked in the driveway. So if somebody has a pickup truck or a van of the same size as someone else who has a work company name on the side of their van, they will still have to park in their driveway, so that the issue of people being able to have access in the streets will still be adjusted. And to Council President's point around the other ordinance, which restricts parking on the street, we have that in combination, so that if in the case of someone wanting to now take 4 cars that are in their parking, in their driveway, and remove those and put those on the street because they're now putting a commercial vehicle, they will be limited in being able to do that. The other ordinance will address that, so that they are only able to have a certain number of cars parked on the street. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Ms. Gaither.
Yeah, good evening. This is Alicia Gaither, and I guess my question is about the legislation as far as it's already been passed about the parking permits. I mean, how long ago was that passed? And of course, we know if you put the trucks in the driveway, more cars are going to go on the street. So my question is, how long has that legislation been in place?
Anybody? It's
2 years.
It's been
so
2
then my question is, what makes me think that that's has to be put into effect since it's been 2 years past and it still has nothing been done?
Great question. In these 2 years, we have changed Director of Code Enforcement. So Mr. Green is online now. He has been working with the council. He sent the email to update to the council last week. He's been working, I believe, with Councilmember Herring as well to make sure that we meet all the specifications before putting this up. I believe it's 30-day notice. We just received the email from Mr. Green last week about specific streets that we're going to target at first. And I don't know, Mr. Green, if you could come up and give an update as to where we are with the notifications, so that we can start putting things up, that would be helpful. And it's still your turn, Ms. Gaither. We stopped your time. Just want to give you an update with that.
No, that's fine. That was my question, is that, you know, it's something that's been passed 2 years ago, and then we can pass this one here and it's going to be probably enforced immediately. But then we're going to drag our feet on something that was passed two years ago. So we're going to be in the same boat that we're in now with a lot of cars on the street. I mean, up here at Hayes and Fisk, it's just absolutely ridiculous as far as even just the cars on the street. So when you put the trucks in the driveway, of course, more cars are going to come on the street in addition to what's already there. So that's just my question about how long is that going to take to be able to get the parking permit legislation effective?
As I said, good afternoon. Thank you for the question. What I can say is that Code Enforcement has placed this RPP program, the Residential Parking Permit Program, at the top of our list, and we're giving it the highest priority. So our goal is to work on this daily, keep the council informed on the status and the city manager informed on the status, get whatever additional resources that we need to make sure that this happens. I'm committed to making sure that this happens. I'm working with Councilman Herring. He's also committed to making sure that this happens. As Council President said, you know, we have a new staff here, and we are focused in on ensuring that this program is enacted. You know, we're here to citizens, and we want to do our best to make sure that this program gets enacted as quickly as possible.
As it relates to the notification that takes 30 days, where are we with that notification?
Well, the notification has been completed, but we wanted to wait to work out a few more details. Councilman Hearn and I, we met one day last week and revised the letter and decided that we needed to wait just a tad bit longer to work through a few more details. But again, this is of the highest priority.
What can you expound on what details we working through? Mr. Councilman Harris?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We have a number of issues. One, you have to have a 30-day notification. That's the first thing. So that's why we're looking at February, that actually roll it out. Two, we had to figure out a type of permit that goes on there that's tamper-proof, that goes on the window that's tamper-proof. I think we found out one that we may be able to get that you can't tamper with. We got a contract with researching tow truck companies to see who we want to get, because again, our tow truck companies aren't good tow truck companies. We don't want anybody coming through pulling somebody's car when they shouldn't be, and then holding the ransom. So we're trying to get that taken care of. Also, we also want to send an initial letter out saying this may be coming to your street, to let them know that we will be enforcing this parking permit program. So really, they're going to get two notices: a citywide notice when it goes out to the citizens knowing this is getting ready to come into play. Your street may be designated as a permit parking street. And then when we actually select the streets, those residents will get a 30-day notice saying your street is going to be affected by this. On this date, it goes into effect. And they get a 30-day grace period before it's towed. So all of that has to be ironed out. And it's really coming down to the permit, the tow truck company, and basically giving people enough time to know that this is coming. I don't want nobody's vehicle towed, and they say they didn't know.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Because again, we're not charging it. The tow truck company is going to charge them whatever they charge them, and that could be like almost $450 or more. Who knows? We don't know what they're going to charge them. So we want to make sure we got everything lined up and right before anybody's car gets towed. That's the issue.
Can we at least send out a notification, the first one or the second one that you just discussed, alerting people that it was an RPP?
Yes.
RPP has been voted on, and that all streets in the city of Glenarden are susceptible to the legislation, and just so we can get that first communication out there.
That's what we already went over.
Yes.
That's the one we just tightened up.
Yeah, is,
that's done.
That can be ready to be rolled down.
Okay. That's the one I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that there, yeah. Therefore, we get that letter out, and then when we iron the rest of the stuff out, send a second letter out.
Council President, and then do a full page in the, I'm sorry. Then we could do a full page in the newsletter also, notifying citizens that this is going to take place.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Gaither, does that answer your questions?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other? Ms. Hunter?
Good evening. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I had a question regarding the parking permits along Hayes Street. Because part of Hayes Street is also, you have some people that reside in apartments, but then you also have those who, live in the houses across the street who utilize they park up in either side of Hayes Street. For an example, there's one household that has 4 large vehicles, and they don't even park in their driveway at all, but they utilize the parking on the side of Hayes Street where the apartments are. And there are some elderly people who live over there, and they have been parking there, and they got their apartment on that side, so they would have easy access to parking, walk up to their patio, their unit, or whatever. Well, they are monopolizing those parking spaces by as soon as they move one truck, somebody comes and they put another one in. And I think that's very unfair. But I think my question too is, what about the residents who reside in the apartments that utilize Hayes Street, to park? What if, I don't know, what if they're being told they can't park it in a parking lot in the apartments and they live there, and so they have to park on the street, and then they're told they can't park on the street? I just want to know if anybody thought about that, or if that's even a issue or concern, or just want to make sure that we're being fair to everyone and not really causing a hardship. We want to get those that we feel like are in violation and don't care about how they park and monopolizing parking. Is like the example I gave you of having a driveway and still utilizing the opposite side of Hayes Street to park all of their vehicles over there, taking away parking from the residents in the apartments. So I just kind of wanted to bring that to the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Hunter. We will consider that and bring and brainstorm on what's equitable. I believe the apartment buildings have their own parking spots, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they have a sign,
Yeah, I think they have to have. Well, we'll check, but they have to have a parking permit to park in the apartment complex. But we should be able to hash out the street parking, because I believe that the parking is the legislation that we're talking about is for the homeowners that live on the street and not the apartment building. So if they're in the apartment building, they should be parking in their parking spots in the apartment building. But we'll consider that, Ms. Hunter, and make sure there's language in there in the notification as well.
Thank you, sir. Do I have any more time left or no?
1:20 minutes. A minute and 20 seconds.
Oh, I don't need that. And then also, I just joined the meeting late, so my apologies. But regarding the parking permits, I hope that the streets that are going to be looked at, are the residents going to have some input into that, or has the assessment already been done, or is it being done? Because that corner of Hayes and Johnson Avenue, that's a hazard, because we get spillover parking right there, and people will literally park on the very end of those streets. We're getting people now that are starting back dumping cars on the end of Johnson Court and Johnson Avenue. Just all of a sudden overnight, a car gets dumped with out-of-state tags, and it, just sit there or whatever. But these people are parking right at the corner, and it makes it a hazard when that's a very narrow street, and we just get spillover parking on Johnson Avenue. So I hope that area is also looked at. That corner of Hayes and Johnson Avenue is really bad right there. It's an accident waiting to happen.
Thank you. And we can definitely look into the parking in proximity to the end of the street or the corner, Mr. Green, if we could look into that as well. Maybe, I don't know, painting those corners red to let people know that they cannot park there, whatever we come up with.
And Council President, I brought this up a bit in the work session, but I just wanted to expound on that point of why I was suggesting that this be something that is applied to the entire city, that wherever the city has jurisdiction, of course, not in the HOAs where we don't have jurisdiction. Because if we do it street by street, then what's going to happen is those streets who elect not to do it are going to end up flooded with cars from other streets, because those people aren't parking, which will not be fair then to the people on those streets. So my recommendation is that this is something that applies to every street in the city, so that everyone has an opportunity to park their cars, and that no one is able to take advantage of it because, they just one street over decided that they didn't want to do it, and now that street is just flooded with cars.
Good point. Agreed. Thank you, Councilwoman Fareed. Mr. Pitts.
Can everyone hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. This is my first time. Well, I'm new to Glenarden. I live on Piedmont. I had a conversation and finally meeting Councilman Hearn. So I just wanted to just kind of chime in just from just my experience as I shared with him in the short time that I stayed on that street. Like I told Councilman Hearn, my biggest thing, I know y'all probably not talked about it, but I'm kind of worrying about the street lights on that street. Just because we have, different events or different things that's going on and it's so dark with the lights going out. And I do like the fact that if you guys are implementing the parking passes, I think we should tackle the lighting on the street as well, because that could prevent people from getting robbed, things happening, because as a city, we're not really addressing those things. Like I said, I've been on that street almost 2 years now. In my house, I'm in the black house, if you guys have seen it. Right in front of my door, like literally right in front of my door, it's so dark that if someone walked down the street and I have a Ring camera, somebody was to get mugged or anything like that, I wouldn't be able to, I couldn't see who did it. So that's a big concern for me. The parking is not really, I'm really not really having issues with parking right now with people. I guess I got the advantage because I'm right across the street from the park. But I just want to see, what's the feedback on the street lighting? Councilman Hearn kind of already shared with me some things that we'll be doing, but I just want to see, what some other thoughts or some other ideas or anything that you guys got to share. Again, my name is Alvin. I'm a new voice, new to the neighborhood, but I just want to kind of put my name out there so you guys know that I'll be chiming in a lot more.
Thank you, Mr. Pitts.
Okay, with the street lighting, City Manager Simpson, we could probably do the same thing that we did over here in Ward 2, where we had called BG&E and had them do the assessment to see if they could, and they did put that light in. So we could probably do the same thing, have them look at that area where Mr. Pitts is speaking of, and have them come and we can have them do the same thing. Did you want me to check with the liaison, or did you want to just check with him?
Good evening. No, I've noted it here, and I'll do just that.
Okay, thank you. Because that should go in within a couple of months if it's done, if they address it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Are there any other comments? I get you. I get your question at the. Are there any other questions online? All right, Ms. Wilson, you have a question?
Yes. Thank you. I might have missed it when the answer that was given to Ms. White by Ms. Jones. In that ordinance, it speaks of the business economic growth here in the city, in our community. And my question is, are those companies that we know of in the city that we're talking about, the parking situation, are they registered? Do they have permits here in the city to operate businesses? And if so, is the city benefiting from that? She might have asked the question, but I don't recall what the answer was. And it's, so if we're talking about economic growth and it benefiting the community, how is it benefiting the community if they're not registered as businesses here in the city, or if they are or not, and are they paying, have permits, are they paying the licenses fees and those kind of things that would benefit the city?
I'm sorry.
Right, and therefore that would support economic growth, because otherwise it's not supporting economic growth.
Okay.
Okay.
It's
I'm
not
Joe Jones,
benefiting
and then
the community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Jones, then Councilwoman Fareed.
I think when this legislation speaks of economic growth, what I'm envisioning or seeing is not necessarily that this person, like the gentleman on Dalewood, not that he is a business, he works for a company, and then he goes out for this company. But as far as economic growth, when I'm envisioning economic growth from this legislation is the people that have moved to the city and bought homes that pay taxes to the city. That's the economic growth that I'm seeing that we benefit from. But as far as them, I don't think there's any. I don't think that we've identified any businesses, personal businesses in the city. There's some suspect businesses, like there's one in Dalewood Court. That gentleman has three different vehicles. So that's suspect. I don't know if code enforcement has went and knocked on the door and asked that person, if they're running a business. As far as the businesses in the city, I think the city has identified all of the ones that are businesses, but the ones that may be operating out of homes, I don't think we have any stats on that or they've been identified. But as far as economic growth, like I said, when a person buys a home in the city of Glenarden, the taxes from that home is paid to the city of Glenarden so that we can distribute services. So that's economic growth.
So
Councilwoman Fareed, if you...
So we're all...
One second,
Okay.
Ms. Wilson. So let her respond. You cannot interrupt, and then the next person is going to be Councilwoman Fareed.
It's not clear to me because I think she's.
I understand.
If I could, then I'm done.
No.
And then I'm done because you're going on to something else. And all I'm trying to say is I think you're mixing apples and oranges because we all pay taxes. We all
understand.
Are contributing
So, Ms.
to
Wilson,
that economic
Ms. Wilson.
growth.
So, point of interruption. Point of order. I respect what you have to say, but respectfully, we did not interrupt when you were talking. So, if you can allow her to finish. The next person who has the floor is Councilwoman Fareed, and then if you wanted to clear something up, just like I came back to you for a second comment, I'll let you clear it up.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilwoman Fareed.
Thank you, Council President. And the reason why I'm chiming in is because I wrote the words, and so I want to clarify what the intention was here. What we're talking about, what was written here in terms of the economic growth and the economic vitality of the community is not particular to any known businesses, but saying that as the city of Glenarden, we are welcoming this type of economic activity as an avenue for growth within our community. As I've espoused numerous times over the last few years of my term, I'm a strong component for community economics and making sure that we have opportunities within our community where we can even service our own community, circulating dollars within our community. And that is what a lot of small businesses do, whether it be the restaurants we have in the community, or whether it be plumbers who can service us, or whether it be HVAC practitioners who can service us. So this is not specific to any person. This is just stating the fact that these types of avenues for income in our city are welcomed, and by welcoming them, we are not going to create barriers to their ability to operate those businesses and, again, service our communities, because that's what typically small businesses do. Small businesses tend to service the communities in which they live and serve because of the nature of that type of business. So that was the purpose of what was written here around the economic growth and vitality. Again, the community economics that we want to support here.
Are you finished, Ms. Wilson?
Thank you. When I think about economic growth, I'm thinking that a business is going to contribute to the community. Not that, because the way it is now, it's the business or those who have businesses which are not permitted, which are not, when I say permitted, licensed or whatever, that does not help the community. That is self-serving. It helps that individual, it helps that family, but it does not help the community per se. And when I think of economic growth, supporting the community, that's how I'm seeing it. That what it is that you're doing is contributing to all of us. And we all, as I said earlier, we all pay our taxes, pay into the system to help each other, to help with the operations of the city, to help with whatever it is that the city as a whole is doing. But when you have just little individuals, it's not helping the community. That is not economic growth. That is allowing someone to have a business, that is allowing, from what I'm understanding you to say, we want to allow people to have businesses. We want to allow people to have their commercial vehicles or whatever, so that they personally can have economic growth. But it does not help the community. It does not contribute to the community.
One second. So I did see Councilwoman Guillaume first, and then I'll come to Councilwoman Fareed.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to make, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
I just want to make a point that when we think about everyone working, whether it's for their own business or if it's for another company, if they are paying taxes, especially if they own property in particular, they are, in my opinion, they are contributing, because if we were to take their employment away, or their means of employment away, in this case it would be a working vehicle, that's where we would see economic decline, because foreclosures add to economic decline. So if you take somebody's point of employment or way to generate income to provide for their family and pay for their home away from them, then that's where you start seeing homes start popping up with boarded up windows, and people start seeing that their values, because I heard things about property values in the past, not from you, Mrs. Wilson, just in general I'm speaking.
I understand.
That's when you actually start seeing the demographic of the community change, because you start seeing that people who were able to pay at one point based on their livelihood were no longer able to pay. So I want to say that. The other thing that I want to say is, again, I keep hearing about commercial vehicles, but we're talking about work vehicles, and there's a difference between the commercial vehicles and the work vehicles. So if someone needs their work vehicle to go, whether it's their company or not, if they need their work vehicle to go and provide for their family, like other ones of us, you know, who work in various shapes or forms, drive our Toyota to go work and provide for our families, I think that it's very much different to compare them to a commercial vehicle, because this legislation specifically breaks it down into what a working vehicle should be considered. So just want to say that. Thank you.
Councilwoman Fareed.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to say that I think this is a great opportunity for us to reach out to the entrepreneurs in our community and have them be highlighted and showcased, because small businesses are the backbone of America. And they have supported and sustained communities like ours for generations, and we should be supporting them. I don't have my phone right now to be able to pull up the stats, but there are numerous stats around the circulation of a dollar in a community, and how the circulation of a dollar in counties like Montgomery County go a lot further than in counties like Prince George's County, because we are not encouraging support of one another in our small businesses. I try to, as much as possible, use businesses within the city of Glenarden, shop within the city of Glenarden, and I think we should all be doing the same. So I just wanted to point that out as an actual fact that small businesses do spur economic growth in a community, and particularly in ours, and particularly in the years that we are coming up upon. We need to be more fortified in how we are using our money and protecting our community.
Yes. And thank you, Councilwoman Fareed and Councilwoman Guillaume. Took the words out of my mouth. That's economic development. That I have a business, I support my family, I pay taxes for the house that I live in, I'm a good, upstanding citizen, and I also take those dollars and I shop at Wegmans, I shop at Horace and Dickey's. You know, I go to, I've gone to Hip Hop Chicken and Waffles. All that supports economic development. I'm mostly at Wegmans, but all that supports economic development. It's just not, hey, this guy has a lawn mowing services, but he doesn't cut my grass, so it doesn't benefit me. That's just not how. That's not the only aspect of economic development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may.
So I'm going to have to
I'm going to wrap my thing up.
Because we have new comments online, and you said that you had a question.
I did.
And I allowed you to ask that question. Is this the final comment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so in all of that has been said here, there's a push for small businesses over individuals. And I say again that the seniors need to be addressed now. That was the original issue, but we've kind of like hopped over that, and we're more inclined of or in favor of making sure that the small businesses are taken care of, or making sure that those who have working vehicles are being addressed and being taken care of. That there's a solution for them. But I'm saying, please make there be a solution for the senior citizens of this community, because they don't have very long. They can't be waiting forever and ever for a solution to their problem. We talked not too long ago at the last meeting, I think, and I said their mobility changes when you get older. You can't do all the things that you used to be able to do. So they're just asking for being able to get out of their driveways, to be able to park, their family must be able to park near where they are. So that's all I'm saying. Don't stray away from what the real issue is. That's all I'm saying. And don't stray away from that. Solve that problem.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. And I will say, thank you, Ms. Wilson. And I will say that we have addressed it. The only reason why we talked about that small business piece is because you specifically asked about it. When we finished before, I said that that the safety of individuals is priority, and we don't have to choose between the safety of people and the livelihood of others. That life always comes before anything else. The only reason why we talked about the economic development piece is because there were two questions that drilled into that particular topic. That doesn't mean that we have built that to overshadow the need for parking around the city. That's not what happened. Councilman Freed, then I'm going to Ms. Armstrong online.
I just want to state that the ordinance quite specifically states that work vehicles must be parked in driveways. So the issue of access for seniors and their ability to get in and out or have vehicles parked there is addressed, because those vehicles will not be on the street, which was the issue that was communicated to us, was that the issue is those vehicles being on the street obstruct. So what I'm not clear on, and maybe someone can help enlighten me, how if one of those vehicles is now not parked on the street, but instead parked in the driveway, how does that still present an issue for mobility, etc.?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking just the question generally, because I feel that it's being misstated what's actually in here. This ordinance quite specifically states that those vehicles are prohibited from being parked on the street. They must be parked in the driveway. And that commercial vehicles altogether, commercial vehicles as defined by the federal government, are prohibited altogether. So they can't even be parked in the driveway. They are prohibited from being parked in the city at all. What we're talking about is vans and pickup trucks of all nature, whether they're for work or for recreational purposes or personal purposes, whatever. Those must be parked in the driveway so that they are not an obstruction for people accessing, tight streets and for people trying to get in and out of their homes. So I just want to clarify that, because I feel like what's actually written in the ordinance is not being accurately represented.
Okay.
Thank you.
Armstrong online.
Hi, good evening. I know this sounds far-fetched, but I'm gonna throw it out. Is there a way that we can find an area that these vehicles can park? Because it's not only the parking that concerns me, it's, quote, the look of the area. And even if the trucks and vans are in the driveway, it's still, when you come in the city and this ward, it just doesn't look attractive. And so, and I do understand that people do have their businesses, and I do try to utilize them myself, but it's starting to look like the garment district in New York City. And it's the look of Glenarden is starting to look bad. I don't know who would be interested in living here if they were to drive through here and see all these different types of trucks and vans, even if they're in the driveway. So I'm just a little concerned about more so of the look. And I think what Mrs. Wilson was talking about, even though the trucks are parked in the driveway, their vehicles could still block people from mobility and getting in and out their driveway. So that's all I thought about it the other night, like, why can't we just have them park in a designated area so that when I do walk through Glenarden, it does look attractive over here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Freeman?
Hello, I'm sorry, I was stuck on mute. Hello, everyone. I'd just like to ask if we as a community are ensuring that new residents are aware of our existing parking restrictions, whether they're leasing, renting, buying. Do they know? Because I've spoken to a couple of neighbors and they just didn't know. They didn't know it was a restriction. They didn't know any policies, any demands. And, once you're in, you're in. And so I just wanted to know, are we taking any steps to give the awareness that this is the town's ordinance or rules or parking restrictions?
So thank you, Ms. Freeman. As we discussed in the beginning, there will be, there hasn't been anything sent out yet. So that, to answer your question, they wouldn't know because nothing has been sent out. But we have drawn up something that we are about to send out, which will be our first wave of notification to citizens of Glenarden. And then 30 days out from when the signs are actually going to go up, they'll get another notification on those particular streets where those signs will go up. But as Councilwoman Fareed said, I'm in agreement with that they should go up all over the city for every street so that we can address all issues. Again, the O-4-2025 does not address everything, only address some of the issue. The other part that's being addressed is the fact that too many cars are on the street, thereby limiting how many cars can be on the street, restricting mobility of people, particularly senior citizens who are trying to get out of their driveway or go into their driveway. So the two legislations combined hopefully will address all the concerns, well, most of the concerns, because it's hard to address every one concern, because I'm pretty sure once all these are up and running that there's going to be another issue, which is fine. And we welcome healthy debate to this. I'm glad that we extended it, glad that Ms. Wilson got to speak twice, because I do think that people's voices need to be heard and that we can clearly understand your concerns and try to address them and not just say this is what it's going to be and that's it. So I appreciate that comment, Ms. Freeman, and that notification will be going out soon. Do we have an estimated timeline on that first, Mr. Green?
Yeah, I mean, it's ready. The letter is ready.
So we can send it out this week. Okay. Councilwoman Fareed?
Yes, but I think also new residents, at least I recall when I was a new resident, I received a copy of the code book, and I know that there have been a lot of efforts over the years, whether it be at the shredding event or when we were giving out PPE equipment or just other opportunities to pass out the code book. I don't know how feasible it would be to mail it to everyone, but maybe with some of these updates, it's not just these new ordinances that are going, but the entirety of the code book that should be communicated to people.
Council. Ms. Ribbon.
Yes, can I just say that also, will it be also in Spanish so other nationalities can understand, or are the signs are going to be in English and Spanish, or is the code book in English and Spanish? I mean, because it's a concern, because majority now of Glenarden is Hispanic, and if they can't read English, then they'll be ticketed, they'll be fined. And also the twofold question that I have is, how long will the ones that are already here, how long will they have to correct their problem as far as their parking and whatever they have to do to get their vehicles off the street?
Yeah, if you could.
I think somebody's going to answer the question.
Okay, I can answer the question first. So for how long will they have, that's the intent of the dual notification. So we're going to send this first notification out. Although this notification go out, it's just to make citizens aware of the legislation that passed, and that they will be informed at a later date of when this will actually be enacted as far as signs going up. So in that first wave, it's the first wave of notification, and then once we have the everything ironed out with how we're going to implement it, then the second notification for the streets that are going to go first, those people who live on those streets will receive a notification that, hey, in 30 days, this parking enforcement will take place, so that they are aware. And we'll probably take it in phases, because we probably can't get everything up on every street at the same time, but we'll take those sections that are hit the hardest with parking and go that way. To the other question, yes, the code is produced in both English and Spanish, and I completely agree. The notices will go out in both English and Spanish as well. Councilwoman Gill.
Thank you, Council President. I also just wanted to, I wanted to also go back to Ms. Armstrong. Didn't want her to think that we didn't hear the point that she raised or the question that she posed. Actually think it's a really great point that you raised, and I wanted to share that even prior to this legislation, in particular, speaking about O-04-2025 being introduced, at least myself, and I don't want to speak for her, but I know Councilwoman Fareed at one point as well, we actually met with the administration or reached out to the administration to look and see if what you were proposing would even be viable, as far as looking to see if there are any vacant lots or anything that the city can do as far as having an opportunity for the vehicles to be parked there, and probably even having the city make money off of, payment being made to the city to, man the vacant lot. But I say all that to say that that was entertained, but that is extremely much more difficult than one would realize or could realize or even be possible. But I do want you to know that that was a great idea. And at least I know I can speak for Councilwoman Fareed, because she and I had spoken about it. We independently and together have thought about that and raised it with the administration.
Mr. President.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Councilman Herring?
Now, I've sat here and listened to all of this back and forth about this piece of legislation. I've heard demographics, I've heard businesses, I've heard this, I've heard that. But again, I'm not hearing about the people. Again, and I think what really kind of frustrates me is that when I'm saying something, I'm not expecting you to listen to everything that I say, but I never said that it was a commercial truck problem in the city of Glenarden. I said it's a parking problem in the city of Glenarden. People could not get in and out of their driveways because the parking was, there were too many cars on the street, there were too many commercial vehicles on the street. That's the problem. Now, someone said demographics, and if somebody said demographics or geographics to me one more time, Glenarden was founded in 1939. And there were no government jobs that they were working. They were working here in the city of Glenarden. They were doing what they had to do to make the ends meet. So it wasn't all of this, professional jobs, professional this, professional that. No. As time went by, we had more professionals in here, but Glenarden has always had individual businesses in the city of Glenarden, and that code for no commercial vehicles has been in place, I have to say, at least 50 to 60 years. And it worked fine. And it's in place to protect the integrity of your neighborhood. Everyone knows, except I guess the members up here, knows that commercial vehicles bring down the value of your neighborhood. That's why Prince George's County don't allow it. And you mentioned Montgomery County. Montgomery County is strict on commercial vehicles also. They don't allow that in their neighborhood because they know what you want to protect not only is your neighborhood, but you want to protect your citizens. Because overcrowded streets can lead to anything, can lead to some serious issues when it comes down to fires and anything else. I mean, when my mother was alive, a house 2 houses up, caught on fire. I had to wrap her up and get ready to take her out the house because we couldn't get a fire truck up the street. I had to go out there and move 2 cars. But see, y'all don't know this because you haven't experienced this, because that's not happening in your neighborhood. You see, I see this. I see the seniors come to me and say, I can't get in and out of my house, so I don't go anywhere. I can't maneuver in and out because cars are all up on my driveway. I can't maneuver in and out because it's cars all up and down the street. I did not say vehicles, so don't take my words and spin them and say, I said commercial vehicles. No. Also, I never said box trucks. I said commercial vehicles. Also, this piece of legislation is very misleading because you can call a work vehicle what you want to call it. It's a commercial vehicle. If it's a vehicle for somebody else's company that's doing commercial business, it's a commercial vehicle. If you bring a plumbing truck home to your house, that is a commercial vehicle for that business. And I guarantee you, if you look at the inventory sheet, and when they do their inventory at the end of the year, they're going to say this is a commercial vehicle. It is not a personal vehicle. So again, this legislation, it is misleading, I'm telling you, because you're sitting there saying you're taking commercial vehicles off the street. You're putting commercial vehicles in driveways. Again, I don't want to walk out my house and look up and down the block and see van after van after van. At the last meeting, I showed you exactly what a van that's less than 10,000 pounds look like. That's a big van. It is going to have lettering on it on top of that as a commercial vehicle. Now, again, to institute a piece of legislation in historical Glenarden that you yourselves won't even have to deal with isn't fair. We buy houses and we invest in our houses, and you talk about investing in your houses. The one thing that we get up here, that we do when we get in these positions as city council, is we're supposed to protect your finances and protect your property. The biggest investment that most people have is their home. The value of their home should be going up, not down, because you want to sit here and allow people to park in driveways and run a business out of their house. Again, you mentioned a gentleman on Delwood. He's doing HVAC, okay, but he's on HVAC for somebody else. Now everybody says they know Ward 1, they know Ward 1. I mentioned over and over again about Delwood. I mentioned this as late as last week, and somebody just mentioned the 3 trucks at the bottom of Delwood. The 3 trucks at the bottom of Delwood is a glass replacement company that had been doing that for years, and we had gotten them out of the community one time, and now they took the logos off the trucks and they put them back down there again. And that needs to be addressed, because I was just down there Sunday. 3 of them parked down there, back to back to back. You know, so I'm just saying, I'm not understanding this whole allowing people to run a business in your neighborhood when the neighborhood is zoned residential. We live in a residential neighborhood. We don't live in the commercial districts. Economic development happened when Woodmore was brought on, and that's true economic development. You don't have economic development in your houses next door to you, because that brings down the value of your house because you're running a business out of it. You're going to have people coming in there and out of there that should not be. We've had businesses in Glenarden for 80 years. We have businesses in Glenarden right now. I know people who were plumbers who did not bring their trucks home. They had their own plumbing business. We had taxi cab drivers. They didn't bring their trucks. They didn't bring their cabs home. They run a lot in the city. We've had people who do architectural work, landscaping, all kinds of jobs, but they didn't bring their vehicles home because, once, this is a residential neighborhood. You want to protect the integrity of your community. You want to make sure, let people see that it's a nice place for you to live. But you see, you got to be here for a number of years to appreciate what Glenarden has done, because I've been here for 60 years. And I'm one of the council members up here that's been up here, and I'm going to speak up. I'm not aligning myself with nobody. I'm not going to go against the citizens that have struggled and struggled to make Glenarden a first-rate community by adhering to laws that will enhance your community, that enhance the attractiveness of your community. I mean, I was out one time, and this gentleman went down in the community, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is a beautiful community." He's like, "I didn't know this was back here." But to go back there, if you do that now, and you just go and see van after van after van up the street, I'm looking around, I see these vans popping up, and I don't think nobody should be given exceptions for it. I honestly don't. If you want to run a business, you got to pay the overhead. It's just that simple. You run a business, you know you got to pay storage, you got to pay something to run your business. And they talk about taxes, 90% of the taxes that are paid, that we spend, comes from homeowners' property values. And that's from values going up, not going down. So if the value goes down, those property taxes and the revenue we get is going to go down. And we won't be able to afford what we afford now. So I'm like, this legislation is not a good piece of legislation. It's a piece of legislation for particular people, and I said that last time. When you start legislating for individuals, that's a bad piece of legislation. It's a terrible piece of legislation, because again, I have citizens that come to me and talk about parking issues. I have citizens that come to me and say they can't get out. I have citizens that come to me, I can't get my home health care worker with me. So what do? Pass a piece of legislation that allows you to put a truck in a driveway and put cars on the street. And I'm going to tell you this about the other parking permit program. That parking permit program goes into effect 2 ways. Either the citizens can petition to have it on their street, or the council can vote to put it on their street. And I'm going to tell you right now, looking at this, if you get 2 citizens on one street that says, "I don't want it because it's going to affect my livelihood," there will not be parking permit on that street, guarantee you. I guarantee you. And I'm just saying that, you know, so again, I'm saying you do what's right for the citizens. Don't do what's right for your friends, because that's what it's about. That's when I was talking about that friend stuff before, this is what I'm talking about. Because you know somebody that's maybe your neighbor that may have a truck or have something. My father, I walked out the house and the code enforcement was citing my father right there in front of me, because he had a car on the side of the house. And I walked right by him and he cited him. And you know, and my father was upset with me. Why didn't you do something? Because the law said you couldn't have it on the property. So you had to get cited. So I don't care who it is. That's just to protect the integrity and the integrity of the community, the appearance of the community, and that's why the county doesn't allow it. I guarantee if you go up in Montgomery County, they're not going to allow it. And as a matter of fact, I researched Montgomery County. You got to have a certain size lot just to have one vehicle on it. This is a residential neighborhood. It's been a residential neighborhood for 80 years, and we got a commercial district over there now. Woodmore, great commercial. That's the economic development. Economic development does not start in your house, in your neighborhood. If you want a mom and pop store, this is not New York City where you're going to need a mom and pop store on every corner. That's not what we're trying to go for. We're trying to keep it a nice residential neighborhood, a nice bedroom community, which is what it was established as for African Americans at a time when African Americans couldn't live nowhere else. So we're going to tear down our own community because we want to sit there and appease to a demographic, a very small demographic at that nobody has a percentage of. And just for the caller, Glenarden is not majority Hispanic. Just get that out the way. I mean, I don't know where that even came from. But again, I just think it's bad legislation, it's poor legislation. When I hear somebody say, this person should come up, this person should be able to park on this street because they're an essential employee, the Washington Gas person, he's an essential employee, which really bothered me to know, and when that was said, because to sit there and say that a Washington Gas worker is an essential, is a first responder, that's what it was a first responder, and take away all the sacrifices that our police officers, firefighters, and EMT do. Those are true first responders. When I call 911, that's who goes there. Not Washington Gas, not BG&E, not WSSC. So you know you're pulling stuff out of the air to try to justify what you're doing. Again, I'm gonna tell you, I live here. I love the city. I love the makeup. I love the atmosphere. I love what the elders have done to get me where I am right now. And that was caring about this community, caring about the people, and ensuring that everybody had a quality life. This legislation doesn't do that. This legislation appeals to certain people, a certain demographic that you know, but that you don't know how big that demographic is. And I'm guaranteed they're going to chime in with this, and this after I finish, because they've already said everything they had to say, but now it's going to be, okay, well, I'm going to add this, and this. You know, my thing is this, I let everybody speak, because I wanted to hear what everybody was going to say and what their reason was going to be. And I'm going to tell you straight up, I haven't heard not one legitimate reason for doing this piece of legislation, not a one. Because again, I'm telling you right now, I think that it's unfair to the citizens in historic Glenarden who worked hard to buy their homes, who wanted to live a quality of life in their golden years, be able to maneuver in and out, don't be able to still be independent. Like Ms. Wilson said, you got people 90 years old that still drive. Why should they lose their independence? Why should they be afraid to leave their house because we want to appease to an economic development which we really don't need to really worry about? Because if you run a business, you're going to do what's needed to make that business profitable. And if you got to take it out the city, then you take it out the city. If you're in Montgomery County, you wouldn't do it. If you was in Bowie, you wouldn't do it. If you was in Greenbelt, you couldn't do it. But come to Glenarden, you can do it. And I'm going to tell you, the one thing that's going to really get me is that those who don't have cars, who don't have vehicles, you're just opening up the whole city to rent their driveways out. And I showed you 2 websites that allows people to rent their driveways out to people who want to rent their driveways out. And there's nothing you can do about it, because I'm going to tell you right now, code enforcement don't have the time, and nor are they legally allowed to run plates. So that means you're going to go to the police and pull police off the street to run plates on people's vans in their driveways. So anybody can rent a driveway now. You can make a couple $100s a month renting your driveway out now in Glenarden because y'all allowing it. I just don't understand the logic in that. So yeah, it's going to be economic development for everybody that's going to be renting their driveways out, making buku money. Because now when you say, I'm going to tell you this, and it gets around quick. When you say something is good in this one location, I guarantee you it's going to spread like wildfire. So and my thing is, and this is just to undercut the legislation that I brought, because my legislation was basically no commercial vehicles under over 6,000 pounds, which would eliminate most of them. But you know, it's got 5 sponsors. You know, and this comes down to the at-large situation, because it's 4 at-large council members that's supporting it, and also you got to realize the makeup of it. Ward 3 members, 1 Ward 1, 4 Ward 3. So, you know, where's the representation at? Where's the fair representation at? And that's why I voted against the charter resolution that made an all-at-large system. Because this is what you get. People making decisions for you who don't live in your community, who don't live in your neighborhood. They live in your community, they don't live in your neighborhood. They don't know what you go through day in and day out. You come in, you may ride through once or twice. I don't know what goes on in Woodmore. I would never sit there and say, you don't need this in Woodmore, because I don't live in Woodmore. I can't say that, because those who live in Woodmore go in and out the house. Those who live in Ward 2 go in and out their house every day. They see the potholes. I don't ride through there, but I see what goes on in my ward, and people can come and talk to me personally. So, you know, I'm just saying that, again, when you're doing legislation, you need to do it for the full community. And when you're exempt from that piece of legislation, it makes it even worse. So I don't understand how you can sit there and institute something for historical Glenarden and exempt yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Harry. You done? You have Councilwoman Fareed.
Thank you, Council President. As the sponsor and the person who wrote the legislation, I'm happy to speak for myself on why this legislation was brought forward. I don't personally even know who these people are. I know of the person who Washington Gas, but I do not know that person personally. I'm not friends with anybody as it relates to this particular piece of legislation. I wrote this piece of legislation and gathered support for it because this issue has been raised since before I was even a council member. I sat here in a council meeting as an audience participant and listened to resident after resident after resident get up at that microphone and speak about how the citations that they have received have been thrown out in the courts because they were not sufficient. This issue was brought up by Councilman Herring, and there was willingness from the rest of the council to move forward with something if there was some compromise. There was an unwillingness to compromise. So in order to stop having this conversation and to move forward with something, I wrote this legislation so we can move forward, so that we can at least try to address some of the issues that have been raised, particularly with the ability for people to access and for these vehicles to come off of the street. I tried to be as arbitrary as possible. As I stated, the definition of commercial vehicle is straight from the federal government, the Department of Transportation. This is not a definition that I created myself to suit any particular person. It's a straight up definition that could be held up in a court of law should it need to be, because as I mentioned, this is a federal definition of what a commercial vehicle is, and it was simply to just move this forward. We have been in a stalemate, and we would continue to be in a stalemate if we were left with a piece of legislation that was brought forth that was not there was no concession on any point. And if we do that, then we're not doing anything for the city at all. So this legislation was brought forward to try to do something.
Mr. President, may I? Because,
yes.
Again, that shows you when people don't take the time to read the charter. Because right now, our charter says no commercial vehicle is allowed in the city of Glenarden. None. That's what it says. So why don't we just enforce what's on the books right now? Only issue we had was what do we want to label as a commercial vehicle, and we could put it, and my legislation actually does that. It says anything 6,000 pounds or more is considered a commercial vehicle. That's the issue we were running into in courts. So no, our charter right now is even stricter than the Woodmore standards. In the HOA standards, it says none. So if you were truly trying to alleviate the problem, then my legislation would be voted into place. But obviously, my legislation does not address the one individual that you know who has a commercial vehicle over 6,000 pounds, because that's exactly what mine does. And his would not fall into that category, and it'd have to move out. And that's why I'm saying this is a preferential piece of legislation. Because again, if you don't want it, if you're looking at the quality of life for the citizens in this community, you would not be sitting here putting more vehicles in here. You would not be sitting here trying to depress the value of their biggest asset, which is their home, by putting commercial vehicles in the community, which is not a good thing for anybody all the way around. So, like I say, obviously you don't have to worry about it because it ain't going to affect you. But it'll affect the historical Glenarden. I can tell you that right now.
All right. Councilwoman Fareed, and then we'll move on.
Yeah. So the difference between the legislations is not anything other than the weight size. So the charter does say that commercial vehicles are prohibited. The charter does not define what commercial vehicles are. That is what the gap was. The legislation that Councilman Herring has put forth says that a commercial vehicle is 6,000 pounds or more. This legislation says that a commercial vehicle is 10,001 pounds, which again is consistent with the federal definition. So it's not arbitrary. It's not you know, I'm not sure where the 6,000 number comes from, but from the definition for the federal government of what a commercial vehicle is, that is what we are following as a definition, and those vehicles would be prohibited in the city in accordance with the charter.
President, just one thing before we move on. 6,000 pounds is considered, 6,000 pounds, 6,000 to 10,000 pounds, if you did your research, is a lightweight commercial vehicle. That's where the number came from. So I don't just pull this out of the sky. That's where it came from. It's a lightweight commercial vehicle. So again, I put that in my legislation, and my legislation goes even further that any vehicle less than 6,000 pounds that had permanent commercial writing or commercial logos on it will be considered a commercial vehicle. So that even addresses that issue. So yes, again, I did do my research.
All right. So as we close out this meeting, I just want to say that I'm grateful for everyone who joined online, grateful for everyone who joined in-house. I think that this is a place for a healthy debate to, you know, express our ideas, our agreement, our disagreements. And I think that's important. I mean, because we could have ended this meeting early. Technically, you're only supposed to have one time up to the podium, but I gave one member multiple times up to the podium because I think that we're well beyond a place where we have to listen to one another. Too often we have a point of view, and instead of listening to the other point of view, we're just spewing out our point of view and we're not listening. And I think we kind of see the results of that from last week's election, that too many people are yelling at the other side and no one's really listening. And so, like I said, while I welcome the healthy debate, thank you, Councilmember Herron, for your input, Councilwoman Jones, Councilwoman Guillaume, and Councilwoman Fareed. I will highlight some undertones that I'm just completely uncomfortable with, and I hope that we can move past it. The undertones that create division, I think we have to eliminate from our debate. In that, I mean historic Glenarden versus new Glenarden, or young versus old. I have a healthy respect for historic Glenarden. That doesn't mean that we don't recognize historic Glenarden. Historic Glenarden is what makes Glenarden Glenarden. You know, and I respect that. You know, to be honest, I drive down the street and I am in Ward 1 a lot because, like I said, I have a child that goes to Glenarden Woods, and the homes there are beautiful. And I would be happy, and I'm grateful for the home I live in now, and I'll be happy in one of the homes in Ward 1. And there's just a tremendous amount of respect there, but I don't want there to be division there. And sometimes when we speak that way, it has an undertone of division, and it does not have to be that way. Like, I want to sit and listen to, the Mr. Winstons and Miss Wilson to get I love African American history, Black history. I love it that Glenarden was the third established Black community in the state of Maryland. Like, this is something that I want to continue to learn. No, I was not born and raised here. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., and I moved here with my family because I thought this was a great city to live in, and it is a great city to live in. I think that we have to do more of listening to one another. I can't promise you that we'll always agree, but I do hope that we can open our hearts and our ears so that we can understand one another. And one example is, I can't get everything that Mr. Herron gets in Ward 1. Correct. He lives there, so I won't know all the nuances. But I do notice things. I do drive there every day. And so when I saw that there was a myrtle tree, which was an issue I think that I witnessed firsthand, Miss Alita Hunter raised, that people run that stop sign on Glenarden Parkway all the time. Well, the issue is, there's a myrtle tree, at least during the spring and summer, when it blooms, you cannot see the stop sign because I ran the same stop sign. And that's because I couldn't see it. And then I had to reach out to Mr. Simpson and say, hey, I just ran a stop sign, not because I just was speeding, just because I didn't see it. So could we either cut back the trees or move the tree? And Mr. Simpson decided to move the stop sign in front of the tree, I believe that was. But I still noticed it today that when those trees really do blossom after certain years, it's hard to see. And so that's something that I advocated for Ward 1. Another thing I advocated for Ward 1 was seeing these kids afraid to cross the street because they don't know where to cross because there's no crosswalk. So I reached out to Mr. Simpson and asked him, I know we don't have all the good materials, but can we create a makeshift crosswalk so people know where to stop so that the cars can stop and the pedestrians can walk. So I live in Ward 3, but I was able to recognize that in Ward 1 by traveling there every single day. So I hope there's not just a complete dismissal because at-large members don't live in one ward versus the other. Let's listen. Let's agree, let's disagree, but let's, at the end of the day, be united as one Glenarden, no matter which way we go. And then if something is passed that seems to have flaws, let's continue that dialogue to see how do we fix it. Because we're not going to always make the right decisions here, but we're going to try to make the best decision that's with the Glenarden's best interest at heart. That's it. So with that, the time is 8:32. This meeting is now closed. Thank you.